Chapter 5. Julie's jeans were a little tight on her, but Renee managed to squeeze into them. Then she found a white midriff top in her dresser drawer that hadn't been slashed. Hetty had cut only the clothes in the closet. The clothes on the left side of the closet, to be precise. Renee's clothes. But how did Hetty know which clothes were Renee's and which were Julie's? She couldn't know, could she? Renee dropped the sandals she was about to put on and stared out the window. She was trying to fight off the thought that had just flashed into her mind, but it had to be confronted. Was it Julie instead of Hetty? Did Julie put the swan in the bed and slash Renee's clothes? Renee tried to remember back to that morning. Yes, Julie had stayed in the room after Renee had gone to the theater. She had showed up about 20 minutes later. Time enough? Was it time enough to run down to the water, grab a swan, carry it back to the dorm, kill it, and plant it in the top bunk, and then slash all of Renee's clothes? Yes, Renee decided. There probably was time enough. But why would Julie do it? Julie was her friend, right? Renee allowed her mind to wander, to follow any path it chose. This was dangerous, she realized. This was something she never did. She always kept her thoughts tightly reined in. She always stayed in control. But now things were out of control, and she knew she had to figure out why. She had to stop this before she remembered Julie's expression when she saw the dead swan for the first time. Julie had been as shocked and horrified as Renee. Was that just an act? Could be. Julie wanted to be an actress after all. But why would Julie bring her all the way to a camp in New Hampshire just to torture her? Because of Danny? No. Julie said she was over Danny and that she had forgiven Renee, but was she acting then too? Was Julie jealous of Renee, of the way boys were so quickly attracted to her? No, Renee decided. These thoughts are sick. Julie is my friend. Julie may be dramatic and temperamental, but she isn't vicious. I just don't want to face the fact that I've made an enemy of someone I don't even know, Renee told herself. It had to be Hetty. Hetty had threatened her in front of everyone, then she had stormed out of rehearsal determined to carry out her threat. It had to be Hetty. Renee slipped the sandals onto her feet. She brushed her hair quickly with 4 short strokes, rubbed on some clear lip gloss, and headed out into the corridor with determined strides. She made a face as she stepped over the fake bloodstain George had left on the hall carpet. Hetty's room was just 4 or 5 doors down. What would she say to her? What would she do? Would Hetty deny it? Of course she would. Then what? Stay in control, she told herself. Just stay in control. Breaking into Renee's room and destroying her property was a crime. Killing the swan was probably a crime too. Renee decided she would just tell Hetty that she was going to call the police. Plain and simple. If Hetty wanted to deny it, she could deny it to the police. Then Hetty would know that Renee wasn't going to stand for any more of her cruel pranks. The idea of the police comforted her for only a few seconds. Then she slipped back into the past, heard once again the wail of sirens, and saw the flashing of red lights. Red, red, always red, the lights as red as blood. No more police, Renee thought. Please, no more police. She knocked on Hetty's door, 2 sharp raps. Hetty, are you there? She shouted, feeling strangely excited as if she were on stage again. Hetty, open up. She knocked again, harder this time. No reply. She listened for footsteps. Silence. Then she heard a banging sound inside the room. It was a soft banging. She couldn't figure out what it was. She listened. It repeated again. Hetty, are you in there? She knocked harder. The only reply was the soft banging sound. What could it be? She turned the knob and pushed open the door. Hetty, anybody here? The banging sound came from across the room. It was a yellowed window shade blown by the wind hitting against the window. Hetty has a deluxe room, Renee thought, smiling. We don't have a window shade. Having solved the mystery of the banging, she turned and started to leave, but she couldn't resist looking around a little more. The lower bunk was unmade. Hetty's clothes were tossed on it. Renee recognized the flower pattern wraparound skirt Hetty wore to rehearsals and the green midriff blouse that all the guys thought was so sexy. I should slash her clothes too, Renee thought, but she quickly fought off the urge, scolding herself. She walked past the bed to the far wall. The chair was piled with clothes too. Jean cut-offs in a green Benetton sweater. Did Hetty wear only tops that matched her eyes? Renee stepped over a rolled-up bikini bottom on the floor to get to the dresser. It was cluttered with makeup jars and tubes, a bottle of spray perfume, combs and brushes, mascara and eyeshadow, used Kleenexes smeared with makeup. She picked up the dangling red plastic earrings that always clattered so loudly whenever Hetty wore them to rehearsal. Renee held them up to her ears and peered into the scratched mirror above the dresser. They seemed so bright against her pale skin and blonde hair. She was still holding the earrings up when she saw the washcloth. It was balled up on the back corner of the dresser. Renee stared at it, slowly lowering her hands until the earrings hit the dresser top. She reached out and touched the washcloth. It was wet, cold and wet, and it was soaked with blood. Renee stared at it for a long time without moving. Then, for some reason, she picked it up and unfolded it. It was almost as if she couldn't believe it unless she held it in her hands. But the washcloth was real, and the blood was real. So it was Hetty, Renee thought. She tossed the washcloth onto the dresser, knocking over several bottles and jars. She could feel the anger welling up inside her, anger mixed with disgust. What right did Hetty have to do those things to her? What right did Hetty have to ruin her summer, to ruin her happiness? What right did Hetty have to spoil everything it had taken her so long to get? She was still standing at the dresser, staring into the mirror when the door opened behind her and Hetty walked in. Renee didn't turn around. She gripped the sides of the dresser and stared at Hetty in the mirror. Hetty was wearing a black string bikini. She had a white beach towel draped around her shoulders. Her long red hair was tied back in a ponytail. Hetty's look of surprise quickly gave way to one of suspicion. "What are you doing here?" she asked, staring at Renee's face in the mirror. Renee turned around slowly to face her. "Well?" Hetty asked dramatically, tossing the towel on the bed. "What are you doing here?" "You're not going to scare me away," Renee said in a low voice, pronouncing each word slowly and distinctly. "But this is my room," Hetty exclaimed. "You can't come in here." "You know what I'm talking about," Renee said, surprised at how calm she was feeling. She was calm, she realized, because she was so clearly in the right. "No, I do not know what you're talking about. Have you gone bananas or something? I'm going to call Bax. What are you doing with my things? Did you take anything? Why did you come in here, Renee? To steal? What are you doing here?" Hetty became more frantic as she talked. She pulled open the door and motioned for Renee to leave. "Go on. Get out. Get out now, and I won't tell anyone you sneaked in here. Just don't ever try it again." "No," Renee said. "That isn't going to work, Hetty. You're not going to turn this around. I know you're the one who killed the swan." "The what? A swan?" Hetty looked truly confused. "You're a very good actress," Renee said bitterly. "I know," Hetty said, her green eyes burning into Renee's. "Better than you'll ever be. But you killed the swan. You put it in my bed." "You're crazy," Hetty shouted. "You're totally bonkers. Get out. Get out of here." "No, wait." She lowered her voice. She gestured frantically for Renee to stay. "I've got a better idea. You stay. I'll go. You stay here and try to get yourself together. Sit down on the bed. Lie down if you want. Just relax. I'll go and get Bax. Don't worry. I'll get help for you." "Nice try, Hetty, but I'm not the one who needs help. I know you're lying. I know you know what I'm talking about. You can't deny it. You can't pretend I'm crazy. I saw the blood." "What? The what?" "The blood, Hetty. I saw the swan's blood. Here it is. Now tell me I'm crazy." Hetty started to laugh, a bitter, derisive laugh, which she cut short. "I'm sorry, Renee," she said quietly, "but I still don't know what you're talking about." "The blood, Hetty. I'm talking about the blood. You slipped up. You forgot to get rid of the evidence." "Renee, look, I cut my hand this afternoon." Hetty held up her left hand. It was wrapped in a white bandage. "What?" Renee was still holding the washcloth as she stared at the bandage on Hetty's hand. "I cut it. I was so angry when I left rehearsal. I started to run up the hill. I slipped on the tall grass. I cut my hand on a rock." "Get real, Hetty. It's true. I tried to stop the bleeding with that washcloth, but it wouldn't stop, so I went to the dispensary for a bandage." Renee stared at the bandage. It seemed awfully large for a cut hand. "I don't believe you, Hetty." Hetty threw her hands in the air. "I don't care if you believe me or not. It's the truth. Now put down those stupid washcloth and get out of my room." "I don't believe you," Renee repeated. The truth was, she didn't know what to believe now. "I don't understand this at all," Hetty said, pulling the door open wider, waiting for Renee to leave. "I don't understand why you're trying to spoil my summer. First you take my role from me. Now I find you sneaking around in my room." "The role is mine," Renee blurted out. She hadn't meant to say that. She didn't know why she had. "The role is mine," Hetty corrected her. You may have it for now. But believe me, Renee, when the last week of camp rolls around, it won't be you up on that stage. It'll be me. Don't ever threaten me again, Renee shouted. It wasn't a threat, Hetty said calmly, almost smugly. It was just a prediction. Furious beyond words and frustrated that she wasn't able to get anywhere with Hetty, Renee tossed the washcloth to the floor and strode quickly out of the room. The door was slammed loudly behind her, making her jump. She stormed out of the dorm and kept going down the hill toward the water, anger mixed with confusion in her mind. She really didn't know what to think. Was Hetty telling the truth? Was the blood on the washcloth from a cut hand, or was the bandage a fake? Hetty had to be the one who killed the swan and cut up my clothes, Renee thought. She's the only one who had threatened me, the only one, and now she's threatened me again. She really thinks she can take control. She really thinks she can take the role away from me. Well, I won't give it up, not for anything. It's mine. It's something I want. It's something good for me, and I'm going to hold on to it. She was walking past the theater now, but she didn't see it. A couple of kids smiled at her as they passed, but she didn't see them either. She didn't see anything. She was too angry to see, too confused. Was Hetty putting on an act? She had to be, right? It had to be Hetty. Hetty was trying to frighten her out of camp. Hetty was trying to make her think she was crazy. It had to be Hetty, Renee decided. It had to be Hetty. Just then, a hand shot out and grabbed her shoulder from behind.